Hi.
Hey everybody, welcome to Knock Knock Hi with the Glaucomfleckens. I am Dr. Glaucomflecken, also known as Will Flannery.
I am Lady Glaucomflecken, also known as Kristen Flannery.
I went with hey everybody instead of
Hi.
hi. Welcome to Knock Knock Hi. What do I usually say?
Hello. Welcome.
Oh, hello. I usually say hello.
Mhm.
That's right. I tried to mix it up a little bit. We're excited to have you here. This is a very exciting episode for us for a number of different reasons. One, we got two great guests.
Yes,
Dr. Chris Worsham and Dr. Anupam Jena.
that's right.
And you may actually know Dr. Jena from the Freakonomics MD podcast
That's right.
that he did for quite a while.
Mhm.
And also him and Dr. Worsham are accomplished researchers and Harvard docs. And they just came out with a book recently called Random Acts of Medicine. And
Right. And you and Dr. Worsham have a connection
that's
that
exactly.
the listeners will have to continue listening
Yes,
to hear
we do
about.
know each other.
Mm.
And it was fascinating hearing their approach to research in a totally different way than what I have grown accustomed to research being.
Well, they have an economics bent, and so it's a little more social sciencey than your typical medical research.
I like it.
So yeah,
I like it.
It's really interesting.
I did like bench research.
Yeah. What did you do?
I did a phylogenetics of North American bats.
Oh, that's right. That was in college, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have to do anything in med school?
Did I have to? No. Did I? Also no.
Well, that was a weird way to say no.
I dabbled in some quote research
Yeah, I
projects.
remember you had to do something.
Yeah,
It was like a thing at one
it's like a
point.
thing. Did it go anywhere? No. But I'm not a researcher. That's why I'm in private practice, Kristen.
I know.
I could go back and do a research career if you'd like me
I
to.
would rather you not.
So
I mean, you can do that, but I don't think I will be joining you.
research is only for some people. It's not for others. And I am more than happy to leave it up to the Dr. Worsham and Dr. Jenas of the world.
Yes. They did a great job of it, and it's super interesting and showing connections between things you would never guess
Exactly.
have connections.
But this is also a very important episode because we have officially been doing this podcast for a whole year.
That's right. 1 year of
Happy
Knock Knock
anniversary.
Hi. Happy anniversary.
That's great.
That's right.
What have you learned over the last 52 weeks?
I've learned a lot about medicine that I was just fine not knowing before, but now I know.
I've learned that we can do a podcast together and still be happy.
Yeah. We've spent a lot of extra time together over the past year.
I'm enjoying it. Are you enjoying it?
Yes, I think it's fun. I really like talking to all of the different people from different specialties and areas of medicine or sometimes just kind of related to medicine.
Mhm.
I think it's been really fascinating, all the different topics that we've got to explore.
I have learned that there's no way we could have done this without producers.
That is 100% true.
I've learned just what goes into a podcast, to
Right.
make a successful podcast. And
It's a lot of work.
there's lots of things.
Spreadsheets involved.
Lots of spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And schedules and
Yeah.
just
A
and
lot
editing
of research.
and graphics and
Yeah.
sounds
That's right.
and words.
That's all the things that are in a podcast.
I think that's all the things that are contained within a podcast.
And a host.
And hosts.
Or two.
And so it's just huge thank you to everybody that's helped us
I
get
know
to this point.
producers in general, I feel like, are the unsung heroes of the entire entertainment industry. So
And
props to our producers.
And just to everybody who is working or thinking about some kind of side project, something that you think is going to be fun. It's okay
Get yourself a
It's
producer.
okay. It's okay to ask for help. You don't have to do it all yourself.
I think that's important to point out, and especially for someone like you, that you are seemingly everywhere all the time. And what people don't see is that it's not just you that is going into making all of that happen. There's actually several people behind the scenes doing all of that stuff.
Definitely.
So I think that's important to point out, though, because people compare themselves, and especially people in the medical profession. You guys tend to be perfectionists and kind of the a lot of you were like the straight A kids, and there's all this competition built into the system to make you
There is a
compete with
lot of
each other.
competition.
And I feel like that, it kind of never fully goes away. It's always in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So just know, it's not as easy as it looks.
Well, go your own way.
Yeah,
But it's okay to have help, you know?
that's right.
It's like there's no way I could do this on my own. So
Yeah.
anyway, should we get to it? Do you have any other thoughts about 1 year?
Um,
Are you ready to go for a second year?
I am ready to go for a second year.
I'm
Yes,
on the
we're gonna
fence.
we're gonna have a new what?
I'm just kidding, Shanti. I'm just kidding. I'm
We're
all
gonna we're
I'm
gonna
all
have a new backdrop soon, so
Oh,
people
we
can
are.
keep an eye out for
We're
that.
moving our studio here.
Yeah, we're just switching rooms in our home.
Mhm.
No big fancy move or
Exactly.
anything, but our kids want separate rooms, so now we all have to adjust.
Yes. Maybe we should save that for the next intro.
Yep.
So let's get to it, shall we?
All right.
Here we go. Here is Dr. Chris Worsham and Dr. Anupam Jena. Today's episode is brought to you by the Nuance Dragon Ambient Experience, or DAX for short. To learn more about how DAX Copilot can help reduce burnout and restore the joy of practicing medicine, stick around after the episode or visit nuance.com/discover DAX. That's nuance.com/discover DAX. All right, we are here with Dr. Bapu Jena and Dr. Chris Worsham. Thank you guys for joining us. It's really an honor and a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I want to start just by, we got to address this. Chris and we're in the same med school graduating class, weren't we?
Right.
That's right. But you were in the year ahead of me, and then you joined my year to grad
I did.
for fourth year. The thing about that fourth year of med school is it's so disjointed, right? That we're hardly together at
Right.
all. So you and I didn't actually have that much overlap.
We didn't. We did not have overlap. It was fourth year. So at Dartmouth, they let us split our fourth year into 2 years, which was
Is that common, do you
It's
think, or no?
it's not common. In fact, I
No.
think they don't give you as good of a deal on tuition if you do that now.
Mhm.
I think they learned,
Yeah.
because that was the thing. Like, you could do that, and then you only have to pay like a fraction of. So it's not like you paid an extra year of tuition.
Right.
You just got like
paid for the parts you were going to class for.
yeah, and interest or whatever. But
And that was so that you could explore other things, right? Like research
or in my case, I decided on ophthalmology so late that
Right.
I had to do something else to like convince people to let me in.
So what were you doing? Research or stand-up comedy?
I was doing research.
Research,
Yeah, sure. I had some very strenuous research electives that I did. Also,
No, it worked out because we had a baby.
yeah,
Once.
Yeah.
And
was a good
he
one.
had a little cancer,
I know, like
so
just a bit of that. Yeah, but this is great. I'm so glad to have you guys on, and Chris, you this is a good lesson for people. Like, some people, when they graduate med school, they go on to Harvard and do research and really important things like write books.
Mhm.
Some of us join TikTok.
Yeah.
It's just a difference, of how people do things.
You came out of the same place. You went different diverging paths after that.
That's right.
Yeah, you know what though? I do remember, so we had a talent show that year.
Oh no.
And I like, on the one hand I could say, yeah, Will, you did some stand up that let's say your comedy has matured immensely since then. But
Mhm.
but I'm really in no position to crack any jokes because I sang in an a cappella group in that talent show, so that's probably worse than bombing with the stand up bit.
Wait, what was the name of it? What was the name of the group?
The Dermatones, like probably about
that's right.
3/4
Oh.
of med school singing groups are called the Dermatones,
Yeah.
but
not-
we were one of
Med
them.
school singing groups. I mean, I can't imagine there are a lot of those.
You'd be surprised. It's a huge deal in the
Yeah.
medical community.
You were like the NSYNC of the class, right, or something like
That's
that.
right.
Well, Bapu, you're no stranger to musical ability. You used to freestyle rap, right? Is that
I did a long time ago. I retired, or I
We're
was
not-
I
we're
was
not-
retired from the game.
and that was on was that MIT?
Yeah,
you
I used to
were
and when I was in college, MIT was a very hip place, so The standards was low to let people on the radio.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
do you have a lot of competition?
No, you just needed
But
to have a pulse above essentially a pulse above 40, you know?
Yeah, there you go.
well, I wanna start by just kind of framing what it is you guys do together. So we're going to talk a lot about your book, Random Acts of Medicine, which is currently on sale, right? You can
Mhm.
go out and get it right now, this very instant, after you listen to this,
For sale,
everybody.
not on sale.
For sale.
Maybe it's
On
on
s-
sale, I don't
oh,
know, but
that's true. That's true. For sale. We don't want to give any.
It may be both.
That's right.
right.
Um, but it seems like the genesis of this type. This is very unusual way of looking at things in medicine and healthcare. And Bapu, and you've been doing this kind of thing for quite a while, starting with the Freakonomics. So, what was? How did you kind of combine this type of looking at economy and Freakonomics with medicine? What was the origin of thinking this way?
First of all, I'm not that much older than you guys. I know it may sound like I am, but I just like a hair
Just
older.
more
Just
accomplished.
exactly.
Just a bit.
I just did a lot more in less time. I'm not. Yeah, I'm a decade older. No, so I was at the University of Chicago in the early 2000s, and that was and Steve Levitt, who was one of the authors of Freakonomics, was there, and he was one of my thesis advisors. And so I kind of got the bug of
Oh.
thinking about the world little bit like he did. But he was working on lots of interesting questions. Much of it was in crime and trying to understand whether law enforcement works and coming up with clever ways to do that. And I thought that those same types of tools, which were sort of using big data in very clever and creative ways, finding these experiments that were happening to people in the real world, not like at the hand of an investigator who's running a trial, those sorts of things were happening to people in medicine all the time. And I don't think that we were looking at those kinds of questions so much. And so that's sort of how I started down that path.
What was one of the first things that you looked at? Do you remember kind of
Yeah, I
the
do
early?
remember. One was successful and one was not successful. The first one, I remember the first idea I ever went to Steve with was looking at the impact of Viagra on divorce. And
Oh.
yeah, I was in the library at the University of Chicago and was reading Yahoo News. I don't know if anybody reads Yahoo News anymore, but I was reading that. And there was some article about STDs going up in the elderly. And then there was an ad for Viagra placed on the side. I don't know if it was targeted towards me or what the purpose was, but I was just like, wow. It just kind of two things came to my mind. I was like, well, I wonder whether or not the increase that we're seeing in STD rates in the elderly is because the introduction of Viagra, which came out like the 1990s, late 1990s, I think. And so I looked
Mm.
at that, but it was really hard to do because it was hard to get data on at that point in time, people who were using Viagra, people who weren't using Viagra, looking later to see whether or not they got divorced. And then the bigger problem is even if you had that kind of data, recognizing that people who are using Viagra are different than people who are not. And so it's not like a randomized trial where you say to a bunch of couples here, half of you, we're going to introduce Viagra into the relationship and see what happens, and half of you not. But my idea was that Viagra could be destabilizing to the marriage because you had these
Mm.
couples who were sort of on the margins of staying together versus getting divorced. And if Viagra comes around and it could do one of two things. One is it could increase the value of the marriage for reasons that we won't talk about. And the other is that
Uh-huh.
it could sort of increase the outside options for the man, or it could be
Ah,
also for the
yes.
woman too. Um, and so that's what I thought was going to dominate. But there was some sort of suggestive evidence that that was happening, but it never went full throttle.
Oh,
That was
so
the
to speak.
first. That was my baby.
Okay. So that was the unsuccessful one.
Oh, the successful one. Yeah, the
Yeah,
successful
you said
one.
you're
Yeah,
batting 50%, which
exactly.
I'm not a researcher, so I feel like 50% is pretty good
Yeah,
for research,
Chris and I,
right?
we got about a 5%
Oh,
hit rate. All right, the
yeah,
second
we
one,
would love a batting
50%.
average of 50%.
All right, so the second one was looking at the impact of uh, twins on divorce. And the origin story for that was I had been interested in whether or not children are stabilizing to marriage, which some people think of. They think of as kids could be the glue of marriage. You
Have
stay
those
together.
people had kids?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So as I was seeing at that point in time, friends of mine starting to have kids, this is not very stabilizing. It looks
No.
quite opposite. It looks like it's like a hurricane coming through. And so the challenge though is if you look at couples who have kids or couples who have more kids, they're different than couples who don't. So you can't establish anything about whether or not kids cause good marriages or cause divorce on the basis of that just sort of raw comparison because the couples are different. And so my thought was, can we look at couples? This is now looking at data in the 80s, couples who were similar ages, but by chance, one couple had twins and another one didn't. So it's sort of shocking a family with an extra child to see what the effect of that extra child is on the marriage. And what we
Mm.
see, or what we saw very clearly, was that couples with twins were more likely to get divorced. And the effect was
Huh.
larger in couples with twin girls, and then second largest in couples with one girl and one boy. And then in couples with twin boys, it was pretty similar to not having a twin. So there's something about having
Hmm.
a twin girl that
Interesting.
was destabilizing to the marriage. I'm not sure what it was, but that was a quote unquote successful uh, idea.
We need more though, Bapu. I mean, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
What's going on with the
We have
girls?
2
Yeah.
daughters.
Oh,
We
yeah,
Two
would
I
like
know.
to
daughters.
We only
know.
have 1 to 1. Yeah, Chris has got, two sons, so you're sitting pretty. Um, so
Am I now?
yeah,
Okay.
all right. I'm not commenting
That's
on your marriage. So the interesting thing was like that the effect on divorce didn't happen early on. It happened when the kids were something like, 10 plus years old, which kind of makes sense. Like when a
Huh.
baby is a baby, there's no difference between boys and girls really. The differences in
Right.
personality and everything else start to materialize later on. And that's when we started to see the divorces occurring, not in the first 5 years, but really sort of years 10 onwards. Um, the other thing that we found was that the divorce effect was larger in less educated couples, lower income couples. And so I think what's going on is that, having two kids can be stressful. There might be something particular about girls at that point in age that is a little bit more challenging. But the effect really is driven among people who don't have a lot of resources to mitigate
Right.
all the sort of challenges that you might have to deal with. Um,
No, that makes sense.
yeah. So
Hmm.
it's sort of an uplifting love story, if you will.
But
And tell me, you doctors, when does puberty start in girls these days?
That's a good question. I have no comment on that.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that one's not for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Perhaps somewhere around, 10-ish.
Yeah,
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 that
yeah.
makes
Just a
sense.
thought.
So, but this, so you just kept going with this line of kind of investigation, and Chris, when did you get involved in all of this?
Yeah, so we're coming on maybe up on 5 years or so of working together. So I had gone through med school and residency, and much of what sort of your work is about is the dysfunction within the healthcare system. And,
Yeah.
and I started taking an interest in, like, wait a minute, a lot of this is really messed up and doesn't work particularly well. And so I started on the path of getting into sort of, a quality improvement and what can we do on this unit or in the hospital. But as I kept moving along in my training and along in my practice, it dawned on me that we got to start looking at the larger level policies. And so, as I was doing the research portion of my pulmonary and critical care fellowship, uh, I basically went out meeting with a bunch of researchers to see, is there anyone out there who can help me learn how to study the healthcare system. And I kind of
Hmm.
think of it as like the healthcare system as an organism, right? It has its own
Right.
pushes and pulls and little things that make it work and make it break, and all of these things that that you're well versed in, and your characters that I see on the wall back there are all contributing towards.
Yes.
So I ended up meeting with Babu, who you can tell is taking a different approach to figuring out how the healthcare system works. And he's also been taking advantage of the data that we have now that just wasn't around, at least not in the quantities and the sort of accessibility
Hmm.
levels that we have it now. And so I basically said, let's learn how to do this together. And we've been working on things now for about 5 years.
Yeah, it was, you know, my some of my you mentioned my videos, like some of them make it seem like I know a lot about the healthcare system, but I had to learn a lot because we don't get a lot of training, a lot of
Right.
education
Mhm.
about, like, I didn't know what a pharmacy benefit manager was. like I didn't know what DIR fees are in the pharmacy world, and there's so much that I had to just figure out on my own, try to find resources, and so it kind of sounds like very similar to your approach and finding, somebody like Bapu where you could kind of combine forces and address some of these things. Um, was that a challenge to like, did you find yourself having to get like a baseline level of knowledge? Like, how did you get there to where you are now?
Uh, a lot of it is just getting your hands dirty, and saying, you know what, if you we're going around the hospital and things are happening and you say, wait a minute, this isn't right, or something, we constantly ask, like, well, what if what happened today didn't happen to go the way it did? What if by
Mm,
chance it went a different way? What would have happened? Right? What if an example from the book would be, we both have kids born in August. When we go in for their annual checkup, usually the flu shot isn't available. We have to come back and make another appointment, right? So,
mm,
this happened to Bapu. Same thing happened to me. We said, well, what if our kids happen to have been born a couple weeks later in September? Then, when they came in for their annual checkup, the flu shot would have been available. And it would have meant we wouldn't have to make an extra appointment. We wouldn't have to come back to the pediatrician, which is a giant pain in the butt. Right. And it would be easier to get them vaccinated. And so we just take that's not, you don't need a lot of training or to sort of
right.
ask yourselves these kinds of questions. It does take some practice to learn how to answer those questions in the data, and that's what Bapu's been doing for a while. That's what I've been doing for a couple of years, and then we can start answering these questions when we have the right data. And so, in this example, we just looked at what are flu vaccination rates when we break it down by birth month of a child, because that's when they go to the
Mm.
doctor. And lo and behold, the kids born in the summer, when it's harder, when they can't get their flu vaccine, they have to make an additional appointment. Their flu vaccination rates are about 12, 13, 14 percentage points lower than kids who are born in
Oh, wow.
October, who come in when there's always an abundant amount of flu shots available and they can just get it at their appointment. Right. So
Interesting.
so most of our studies have some sort of like little story like that got us going down a rabbit hole. And we go down a lot of rabbit holes, and we don't we don't always come up with a diamond in the rough there. But occasionally, we have the exact data to answer the questions. We have enough evidence in the data to sort of back up what we think is
Yeah.
happening, and those are the studies we run with.
You keep a just a running list of rabbit holes that you wanna,
Uh,
eventually go down? Is that how it
Literally, well,
works?
it's a Microsoft Teams page, but yes.
No, but it's bad though because, for example, like every Chris, like, is it correct that every month when we like meet 2 or 3 times a week to talk about new ideas, we just like brainstorm, and probably once a month I'll get on the call as I'm driving to play soccer, and I'll say to Chris and the others, "I've got this great idea," and I'll start saying it, and it feels like an amazing idea, and Chris will say, "Papa, you said that last month, and it didn't work out," and I'll do the same thing every few months.
Oh, that's funny. I'm a September baby, so I was really interested to read. You have a couple September baby findings, but I always enjoyed it because I was one of the oldest kids in my class. And so I was always very small, but I was smart. And I think, part of that at least was also because I was, 9 months older than some of the kids, at least in the early years. I think that probably makes a difference. Can you talk about what other things happen with September babies versus others?
Why should we never have September babies? Or why
No,
should
you
we have
want
only
So
September
you
September
want
babies?
September
babies.
band.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
You
I'm
want September
I'm
babies.
curious though,
To hell with the August babies.
yeah, we
No.
don't
That's
want any
right.
Get
August We're not
never.
did you feel though, sort of more if you were to look back, and it's hard to know, it's like a N of 1 here, but do you
Right.
think that you develop more self-confidence as a result of just being older and a little bit smarter and faster than your peers?
I think so. I mean, look, I'm like 5'2", and at that age, I was like 40 pounds in third grade or something. I mean, I was a tiny kid, so I was never going to be the most athletic. But I did feel like, um, there was like some social cachet in being older, right? And then especially like into high school, you'd start to like get your driver's license. So I was one of the first ones to get my driver's license, things like that. I think definitely played a role. With like intelligence, it's harder because there's individual differences in that across the board anyway, even if you could control for age. So that one's a little bit harder. But I did feel like things came easier to me than to some of the other kids. Yeah.
Yeah. I think athletic ability too, because maybe not for you,
I was gonna
but
say.
but
Well, I was a gymnast. I don't know if age has anything to do with gym. I can't think of how that would affect
I don't know.
gymnastics, but
But because our bodies change so rapidly at that age, and so the strength and the flexibility and athletic ability of someone born in September versus you know
well, it depends on when
Yeah.
the season starts,
February
right?
or
Like there's that
Yeah.
March.
famous study with the hockey January babies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll let Bapu fill you in on the medical aspect of this in a second, but we actually talk about a number of studies in the book looking at sports
mm,
explicitly. So yeah, so there's that hockey example that a lot of people might have read in like a Malcolm Gladwell book. It's not just that; there's actually countless examples. So one I really like is there's a study of professional tennis players in Germany, um, and the cutoff for tennis is January 1st. And
mm,
so what they found is that if you look at sort of the very lowest levels of tennis rankings, people their birthdays are kind of mixed. As you get to higher and higher levels of the tennis rankings, they shift more and more and more towards having birthdays in January, February, and March. And the thought there in sports is like, well, yeah, as a young child, maybe you're bigger, but you also get put in, like, you might get better coaching, you might get put on a special team. And that just sort of is a self fulfilling
mm,
prophecy that the kids who early on have an advantage, they continue to reap that
Right.
benefit over their careers, all the way up to the NHL.
Because I
mm,
mean, there's like a complementarity to it, right? It's not that everybody ends up at the same place. I think the point of these studies is that they don't end up at the same place. So it means that
right.
when you're young and there are those relative differences that you would expect would go away when you're age 50, they may not because someone's picking up on those. They're investing in you in a different way than they might invest in another
Yeah.
Yeah.
child, and
r-
that has an effect on how you
Kind of a
develop.
ripple effect.
Yeah, it has a ripple
Right.
effect. Yeah.
One of the topics, since we're talking about sports and like physical activity, I was really excited to hear that maybe running a lot is not good for you. This is with regard to marathons.
Yes.
Exactly. So marathons, I believe they can be harmful to your just overall health, right? Because I mean that's a lot of running, probably bad for your knees and stuff. But what else should we know about potentially marathons and how they function?
So I'll say two things. One is on your point. I
Make
wouldn't
me
be
feel
surprised.
better about not
Yeah,
running.
I don't run. The only marathons I'm a part of are like Law and Order SVU marathons and Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of marathons
I
Yeah.
I'm
mean,
interested in.
let's remember the guy who ran the original marathon collapsed and died at the end,
Oh,
right?
I didn't know
I
that.
was
Yeah,
not aware.
yeah. So just we'll keep
Well,
that in mind.
all right.
That's because he didn't take vitamin C. That's different. You know,
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure.
so I mean, if you look at people who are training for a marathon, it's obviously really intense, right? And it wouldn't be surprising to think that that could have a negative effect on the body. If you look, for example, at cardiac biomarker measurements in people who just finished a marathon, they're elevated, almost mimicking the pattern of a heart attack. So there's some injury to the heart that happens when you run. So if you look at a bunch of people who are registered to run a marathon and some people by chance weren't able to. Maybe their flight was canceled from wherever they were flying from, or maybe they sprained the ankle the day before, and just again randomly they didn't run the marathon. I wouldn't be surprised if you look at hundreds of thousands of those kinds of observations. The people who didn't run the marathon for some random reason might fare better in the short term, maybe 6 months or a year, because they don't
Mm,
have that just additional injury to the heart that comes from that 26 miles. But the chapter in the book is about a different sort of effect, and it's based on my wife's story. She was running a race in Boston. She wanted me to watch her on the race route. And so I said I was going to do that, but I thought I'll park at the hospital where I work because I had a parking space there and it was right on the marathon route. So as I'm driving down our main thoroughfare to get to the hospital, I have to turn around because that road is blocked. And it's because the race
mm,
route was going through that area. And so I go back home an hour or two later and I see my wife later in the day and I tell her what happens. And she says, well, what happened to everybody that needed to get to Mass General that day? And I was like,
Yeah.
that's a really interesting idea. And that was just sort of an offhand comment. But to Chris's earlier point, it's like when you hear things like that and you start to think about the world like this, I just like, that's a good idea. And so literally the next day, we started looking at uh, routes of marathons, the major marathons in the US. We figured out what zip codes they go through. We looked at data and found people who lived in those zip codes, people who lived in the surrounding zip codes. And what we were looking for was any evidence that older Americans were more likely to die because they couldn't get to the hospital on time on the day that a city was hosting a marathon because all the roads were blocked. And that's exactly what we found. If you look on marathon day in a city
Mm.
that hosts a marathon, there's an increase in mortality for people who have heart attacks or their heart stops, like cardiac arrest. Um, and there's no quote unquote marathon day effect for anybody in the surrounding towns that aren't affected by the delays. And the last data point we had was that we were able to get data from a subsample of those cities, maybe like 3 or 4 cities, on actual ambulance transport times. And we can see in the mornings when the roads are closed during the marathon, the ambulances take longer to get to the hospital. And in the evening, there's no more delays. So it is something about delays in care that happen because the roads are being blocked. So that was sort of the finding. That's how marathons affect your health,
Wow.
and even if you're not running.
See,
I would have been
marathons are bad
so
for you.
mad if you hadn't been able to get to the hospital because a bunch of people were running. Like, ugh.
Well, I'm so impressed by just like how your brain works. Like I would never like hearing that from your wife would be like
Yeah, what would your
Wait, be
my
reaction
careful.
have
Not
reaction
been?
would
everything your wife says is important. Next question.
no, no, I know. No. My reaction to hearing that story would be like, "Oh, I should make a skit about a marathon doctor and how they can't." It's like I would not think, "Oh, maybe we can study this." I guess that's
And
the
like
difference
save
between me
some
and like a
lives.
researcher.
Yeah.
Well,
But
That's why
but to be
I
fair,
am never I am never more like secure in my decision not to pursue research than in this moment.
the
Anyway,
thing is, Bobby's a smart guy, but we also practice this. This is why we meet and have meetings like this where we spitball ideas a couple like for 60 minutes a couple times a week.
how does that work? Like, what are those meetings
Oh,
like?
that's
Tell me
fun.
about
Uh,
that.
I mean, some are more fun than others, but it's really just so we have people ranging from we've had high school students stop by our meetings all the way up to sort of seasoned professors of medicine, like the elderly Dr. Jenna here, and
oldie but
and and
goodie.
and it's just one of these like there's no idea that's too stupid. We have discussed some of the stupidest things you could imagine, and just once you're talking about it,
Yeah.
we build off of one another. We all have sort of different perspectives on things. We might know sort of, oh, we could use this data. If we were going to use this data, how would we look at it? And most of the things we talk about go nowhere. Or most of the
Yeah.
things we talk about rely on us trying to like get somebody to give us some data that we will never ever get because it's proprietary or something. But once maybe 5 or 10% of our ideas we can actually go through and look at the data, and then a subset of those we actually have really high quality evidence of what we're looking at, and those are the ones that we publish and talk about.
What's one of the craziest ideas you've had that did not work out? Like, what are we talking?
Craziest.
What's what? Give us a rabbit hole
Yeah.
that is that did
I'll
not go
give you
was
anywhere.
one, Chris. I'll
futile.
give you a moment to think because I have one that just came to mind, which is
Okay.
we wrote about it I think in our Substack a couple months ago was when Ashley Madison. I don't know how much you know about the website, but
Oh, that's
I
a
won't.
cheating
Yeah,
website.
exactly,
Is that
exactly.
right?
Cheating website. Yeah, look, opportunity searching website is I think the way they framed it. But yeah, so people searching for opportunities in all the wrong places. So there was this big data breach, and I remember hearing about it, and I was like, first of all, I would love to be able to scrape this data to figure out who's there and see if we could link it to other things. Um, but that was difficult. Uh, but I thought I
What
was
did
like,
the IRB think of
yeah,
that
Yeah.
one?
exactly. They
We-
do. We didn't run that one by there, no. But I was like, that was a huge data breach. And so I was thinking, I was like, could it be the case that you would see an increase in heart attacks in, middle-aged men who might be the demographic that was using that? And so we basically looked to see whether or not there's an increase in heart attacks when that data breach happened, and we didn't see anything. But that's sort of like, I mean, we have all sorts of like wild ideas like that, which they're not that hard to
Yeah.
investigate. It's a few hours of time. If they hit, they're great, but we can cut bait pretty quickly and say, okay, there's nothing here.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
another one. So I've always just enjoyed watching like stand-up comedy. I remember when I was like a teenager and I saw Robin Williams live on Broadway, like on DVD or something, and I was hooked. And I've always just sort of like watched stand-up comedy as like it feels good, right? Obviously you're laughing, but there's a lot of like empathy that you connect with comedians, as I'm sure you guys are aware. And so I was thinking, well, we have now these like big comedy specials that come out on Netflix that like millions of people watch the day it comes out. So we were curious, like, are those is laughter the best medicine, right? Like, are people watching these specials? And because when it comes to like if you're depressed or if you have some other health condition, right? When that comedy special gets released on Netflix is random as far as your health is concerned, right? So it's this randomly timed event. Wanted to see, were mental health outcomes better shortly after these comedy specials came out on Netflix. We didn't find anything, but no matter how many times I email Netflix, they don't ever want to share their data. So
Sure.
if anyone's
Hey,
listening,
hey, if you want to do that same thing but do Glaucomfleckens skits, I'll
Yes.
give you all the data you want.
Exactly,
there we
exactly.
go.
You
So,
may not want to know the answer. I don't know.
Uh,
um, that's I just can imagine the. I wish I could just be a fly on the wall and like the meetings with the IRB, honestly, because like to come to with these ideas, it's it's fascinating, and I think it's really cool too because now we can get data from so many different places and so many different formats. Like data has never been more easy to access, right? So it makes sense to be like just looking at anything you can like to see if there's something there.
Yeah, we got our hands on some data from the Florida Highway Patrol. This was actually the
Was it?
first project I worked on with Bapu to sort of set the tone. But so we we had this Florida Highway Patrol data, and we linked it up with a physician database to look at doctors who were getting speeding tickets in Florida, and we were trying to figure out which specialties were speeding, what kinds of cars they were driving. So any guesses
This
as
is sounding like one of
yeah,
your
so
skits
any
already.
guesses
Yeah.
as to which specialty was racking up the most tickets for excessive speed? So, like, I think no,
Oh,
Emergency.
oh,
misdemeanor levels of speeding, like I think 20 plus miles per hour of the limit.
I would think emergency
I would say some surgeon
or OB.
subspecialties, maybe even cardiology. I'd throw cardiology in there.
All right, so the answer to
Uh,
that one is the psychiatrists.
What?
whoa,
So
really?
now, what about who was driving? Who was most likely to be driving a luxury car when they got pulled over for speeding? That one, that one goes to the cardiologists.
The
yeah.
cardiologist.
Okay.
All right, that makes
Well, and
sense.
speaking of cardiologists, they're not gonna be very happy with this after this episode. You have another finding about cardiology that you
Well,
write in your book. Can you tell us
well,
about?
before we get to that, I
Oh,
have one more follow up question about the car, about the
oh, okay,
speeding
okay.
thing. So, how did you find out the specialties?
They matched it up with the physician database.
Yeah, so you have
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so you could match by name.
One of us pays
Yeah,
Well,
attention.
you could match them on name and region, and right there's going to there might be a handful where
yeah.
there's like two people by the same name living in the same place, but also that's going to happen somewhat randomly too, so it doesn't actually bias our results all that much. So yeah,
Mm.
it's
Gotcha.
just linking them up. Like, a lot of this
Is it
data's out there.
was it hard to get that data, or did you have to uh, have
Anything's
like
possible in the state of
Yeah,
Florida.
some
Just ask.
Yes,
there's
that's
no
someone
right.
rules,
No
so
rules.
no rules.
someone had done a freedom of information request for it for another project, and then
Ah,
we've repurposed it. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
How is AI is it making more things possible for you guys? Like, does it speed things up for you, or do you still have to do everything yourselves?
I'm
Uh,
actually an AI.
Because some of
I'm an
these
AI
ideas
bot right
sound
now. You're not
AI
talking to a real
generated, to
person.
be honest.
uh, no, we don't. We actually we still do it the old fashioned way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will
Research
say two things.
assistants.
One is I do ask ChatGPT. I'm like, I'll ask it for ideas. It's like, all right, if you wanted to do this,
Yeah.
how would
Yeah.
you do it? And the ideas it comes up with they're not actually bad, and they're useful to sort of be a
Get the
starting
juices
point. But
flowing.
like just
Yeah.
to give you an example, as Chris was telling you the story about the Florida data, when we're in an idea meeting, we're just kind of thinking off the spot. And the first thing I thought about just now is, we have the data linked on who's getting a ticket, and we know when we know the day that they're getting pulled over and getting a ticket. You could see, for example, surgeries that are performed by surgeons on the day they get a ticket versus the days before and the days after. Because if you're driving the
Oh.
office, if we know, for example, that the timestamp is in the morning, and we know from the administrative
Hmm.
health data that we use that you were performing operations during the day, like you weren't on call, we know that those happened after you were pulled over. So is that enough of a
Right.
distracting event that we see worse outcomes that day compared to the days before? That's not a bad idea,
Interesting.
right? For off this,
Right.
like 3 out of 10.
Yeah. That's
I did
that's
3 out of
good.
10.
I'd also be interested in knowing which specialties are more likely to get let off with a warning.
Ooh.
Yes, that's a great, yeah. So
The
the pay.
challenge there is that a lot of times warnings don't get documented, so
Oh,
we
really?
don't know.
Okay.
No, but the way that
Mm.
you could do that, Will, is like, so people have looked at racial bias in policing, and
Hmm.
they use sort of the idea that if you're right around like 9 or 10 miles, like if you're at 9, the officer might put you over if they want to give you a ticket. If you're,
Mhm.
or they might round down. So they look at sort of rounding behavior in the speeding ticket citations to get a sense of who might be exhibiting some bias in policing. So you could do the same sort of thing with certain specialties to see if there's certain sort of peculiarities in the distribution of speeding tickets, like
Yeah.
where they're getting ticketed at what speed,
Ah.
that would indicate that some people are sort of being let off a little bit easier, a little bit more
See,
lenient.
Right.
this is why he's the Harvard guy.
No,
Yeah, it's
I'm
true.
older. I'm older.
Older
You've been
and
around the
wiser.
block. All right,
Okay, but no, we got to circle back to the
yeah,
cardiology thing.
let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and do
Okay.
that. All right. All right, we are back with Dr. Jenna and Dr. Worsham. So we were just talking about how cardiologists are some of the ones that speed, but only uh,
No,
no,
they're not
oh,
speeders. They're the luxury
they're the
cars.
luxury car
Yeah.
speeders,
Nope. Just just drivers.
just
No,
drivers
they're
of
the
luxury
luxury
cars.
car speeders, and
They're the
Oh,
luxury car
they are?
speeders.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
the psychiatrists are the extreme speeders.
that's
Right.
right. But yeah, go ahead. You had a question about the cardiologist.
Yeah, I was just going to say they're not going to be very happy with us after this episode, but in addition to luxury car speeding, you have another finding about cardiologists. So could you tell us about that?
Yes. Yeah, the cardiologists don't like this paper, but a few years ago, we looked at what happens to patients who have heart problems during the dates when cardiologists are out of town at big meetings. Like they go to the American Heart Association, American College of
Mm.
Cardiology, these big national meetings that cardiologists will often leave town to attend for a lot of different reasons. And so we looked at what happens if you're a patient who has an acute cardiac emergency by chance during the dates of when these meetings, what happens to you? And I thought that you would do worse. And I thought you'd do worse because I said, okay, the staffing is going to be lower. Maybe the
Right.
quality of the doctors who remain behind is not as high as the people who are sort of the premier doctors who left to go to these meetings. And we actually find the opposite. We find that mortality falls for people who are admitted to the hospital during the dates of those meetings. So there's something about the care that's provided during the dates of those meetings that actually leads to better outcomes, not worse. And the other piece of information that's important is that we find that rates of certain procedures fall by about 30% during the dates of the meetings. So there's some indication that less is being done for people, for patients during the dates of these meetings, and somehow they're doing better, which is sort of a paradoxical finding. It's not sort of something you might want to
Right.
hear as a cardiologist.
Right. Maybe fewer surgical complications or some. Do we have any idea like why they're not dying?
Yeah,
What do
I
you
think
think?
I think what's going on is, so yeah, there is that, right? So any sort of procedure always entails some short-term risk, but long-term benefit. So you might think that if you're doing 30% fewer procedures in that few days after the procedure where there's always some risk, maybe you're just shaving off some deaths that way. And but we actually find it's not just that. These are sort of we find these long-term effects. So it's not only a short-term thing that we find. I think what's going on is it's just the appropriateness of who's getting the procedure. And the story I'll give you is imagine you've got two people. One's a 40-year-old guy who has no medical problems and he just smokes. That's all. And he's working at a construction site one day. He has chest pain and he gets taken to the emergency department. And they do some tests and they figure out he has a heart attack. He gets a stent in his heart arteries and he lives a long, happy life. The second person is a 90-year-old woman who's got 10 different medical problems. She lives in a nursing home, and she has the exact same chest pain as that first guy. She gets brought to the emergency room. They do the same lab tests, do the same EKG, and it looks exactly the same as the first guy. So they say she has a heart attack. And what do? They say, we're going to intervene on her. We're going to open up her arteries. And they do that. But then she has a complication from that procedure and dies, a couple of weeks later. That kind of story, I think, resonates with most people. You don't have to be in medicine to see how that could occur. So I think it's just sort of like that risk benefit trade off is being done differently in non-meeting days of the year versus on meeting days where you're just sort of they might be a little bit more cautious about who they intervene on, and that
Right.
could be harmful, but it might be helpful.
Mm. And
Interesting.
what did the cardiologists think whenever this came out?
I think what did the president of the age fake news was
Yeah,
yeah.
that was the abbreviated version. There
Yeah.
was mixed reactions.
The PG version.
Sure. What happens when all the ophthalmologists are out of
Well,
town?
see, it's funny you should say that because that's a common joke, right? Like, oh, all the emergency doctors are in Vegas or whatever. Like, you better not have an emergency. Same thing with eyeballs. Like, well, who's going to take care of the open globe? So it's
They
like,
can all wait till Monday. That's what we've learned.
well, yes. I mean, that's ideally they would, but and so, but now that like they're actually studying, you could do this in so many different like areas of medicine, right? With
Yeah,
all
you
these
could. And
national
by the way,
meetings going on.
it can wait till Monday, but it can wait till Tuesday if it's a 3-day weekend. Is that correct?
That's
That's
yes,
Well,
medically
yes, that's
yes,
correct.
of
right.
Yeah.
course.
Yeah,
I
you could
mean,
do
Whatever
this
whatever
across.
the next clinic day
Yeah,
is.
whatever the next clinic day is. Yeah,
exactly.
but you could do
Chris,
this
really, why
anywhere.
why did you not go into ophthalmology? I like, dude, come on, man. Like
I'm
it was
not.
right there.
I don't have the patience for the little. It's so small
Little tiny
that
things.
Yeah,
I have like a handful of procedures I do. The jugular vein is way bigger a target than
that's right.
whatever you're
Yeah.
doing.
That's you can't see that thing though. I don't know. That seems really hard. Um, so what else is kind of just what are you ruminating on? Do you have any new studies? Anything you're interested in that's coming down the pike? Or do we have to wait till your
Oh
next
no,
meeting
Chris,
together?
Chris, go ahead, share. You can.
Well,
We're actively working on some interesting stuff now.
yeah. So we are. One thing we're working on right now is to try to figure out. Uh, Remember, we had talked about the birth dates and the flu shots that being sort of a randomizing event to sort of how easy it is
Hmm.
for you to get your flu shot. But we also can say, well, it's also a randomizing event as to when you get your flu shot. And so we hear all the time that it's recommended that you get your flu shot in October. Um, but we don't actually, there's not like randomized controlled trials saying you get randomized to September, you get randomized to October, you get randomized to November, blah, 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 to determine that. And so one thing we're looking into is to try to take advantage of that random birthday effect on the timing of influenza.
Hmm.
Um, let's see what else
That's interesting.
Oh,
we're
yeah,
working on.
like, so what do you want to tell me what we find?
Well, yeah, so we're working on this right now, but what we find is that the patients who are born in October tend to, not surprisingly, get vaccinated a little bit earlier than people born in December and a little bit later than people born in like August. So not only were these kids most likely to get the flu shot in the first place, but they also are the least likely to get the flu among all the kids who got vaccinated. So something really special about
Oh,
these
interesting.
October kids are they are they are the best. They get the best outcomes for flu every year. These young children. Um,
You're an October
I'm an
kid.
October kid. Yeah,
Lucky you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I know. I keep saying it's, and you're September.
Yeah,
You're pretty
that's not
So,
so
close.
bad.
I'm
Yeah,
okay,
July.
but
yeah.
I'm
not
screwed.
quite as
Oh,
good.
you're
Oh, you're
screwed.
yeah. Sorry, I'm amazed you're still
I'm
alive.
surprised I'm still
It's
here. Yeah.
well, that's just that's fast. And how big is your team? Is it just you two doing all of this,
Oh,
or
I
like
gotta have a bunch of
you
undergrads.
got to have like there's got to be a lot of med students that are dying for publication that you guys can help out with.
So
You have a
it's a small operation.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
So
Yeah,
all
we
it's
right.
just
have
Chris, myself, and we have an RA, Charlie. I mean, we're sort of the core group. Dave Crone is a surgery resident. I'd say probably four of us, or the five of us, maybe.
yeah, but we collaborate with a lot of people who have
Yeah.
expertise in things that we don't know a lot about, but we will put in the effort into thinking like, well, how can we use the data in a creative way to answer a question, and then get sort of a consult from somebody else. So like,
You should put that into AI. Like, say, so and so does this, we do this. Create 10 mashups of like
Like the
yeah.
research
remix,
questions we
yeah.
Well,
could do.
so we did the study collaborating with economists who are really good at using data about the weather.
Huh.
That's like not like very detailed data. This economist Eric Zhao at the University of Michigan, and we had heard. So there was back in 2016, there was this big outbreak of asthma in Melbourne, Australia, where there was this thunderstorm, and then like thousands of people in the span of a couple hours had asthma attacks, and it completely overwhelmed their healthcare system. It was this big thing. They now have like thunderstorm asthma alerts set up in that part of
Whoa.
Australia.
Huh.
So we were thinking, well, this is a little bit strange, and we hear people talking about thunderstorm asthma. We wanted to take a look at it. So teaming up with weather specialized economist, who he was able to use this data from the lightning detection network. Literally every lightning strike that happens in the United States is recorded, like for decades. And so we could look, this is when and where lightning struck. Could we look at people getting asthma attacks or COPD exacerbations after lightning strikes there? And what we found was that actually what was happening was that people tended to get the most sick in the day before a thunderstorm than actually the day of or the day after the thunderstorm. And the reason for that
While
is
the wind
probably
is blowing
yeah,
through.
exactly. So the pollutants and humidity and air temperatures all rise right before the storm, and then the winds from the storm clear all that out, and you're left with better air after the storm. So most of the time,
Huh.
that's what's driving breathing problems from a storm. But every once in a while, you get these perfect storms like happen in Australia, where they think what's happening is the winds are blowing pollen in and making everybody really sick.
Hmm.
See, I this is interesting. Like I'm just thinking like if I would have been exposed to like these types of questions
Mm-hmm.
as like a pre-med med student,
Yeah.
I'd have been like, oh, hell yeah, research. Let's do it. Like
Until
I'd be
you got to what it takes to do that
okay,
research, when
maybe
you sat down at that desk as the RA, I promise you, you would not have stuck around.
Yeah,
just trying to envision a world in which I'm not a private practice ophthalmologist. And instead, I have a robust research career in
I
medicine.
cannot envision that world. Mm-mm.
Well, I want to talk certainly about the book that you guys have put out together, Random Acts of Medicine, and so kind of take me through the origin of this book. What made you want to put this together, and what do you hope people get out of this?
So the book, I mean, we struggled actually a lot with just the title, but the title actually says it all. The book is really about these random acts of medicine. So the marathon story is a good example. You happen to live close to a marathon and by chance have a heart attack when the marathon is being run that day. It could have happened. You could have had a heart attack on any other day, but it happened on that day. And that, in fact, affected the course of your life, maybe even led you to die earlier than you otherwise would have died. And so we talk about how there's all these sort of random things that affect our health. And it's not surprising to people when you think about randomness, right? Some people have cancer who didn't have any risk factors for it. Some people might be hit by a car. All sorts of things happen. And those are things that we can't predict. In hindsight, it's hard to
Mhm.
predict. Why is it that someone got hit by a car when they were walking outside? It's totally random, but there's nothing you can do about that. Um, in all of our studies, there is this component of randomness, but there's also something that we can learn about it, about the healthcare system or our healthcare. And probably from the marathon study, it teaches us that time matters a lot in medicine. And we were talking about delays of ambulances on the order of a few minutes on average. And I don't know that people would think that a few minutes would be life or death. Um, if you've had a cardiac arrest, that's already a really severe place to be. And nonetheless, we find that is the case. So all of these studies, all of the chapters in the book are about different things that affect us in sort of random ways. We can't predict them when we're kind of looking at the world, but in hindsight, they kind of make sense and they teach us something about how the world works. And we argue how to make medicine better, at least in some places.
Yeah, and we also talk about a lot about sort of, healthcare is this, it's a human endeavor, and with that comes all the messiness and imperfections. A lot of the random acts of medicine we talk about are ones that are brought on by cognitive biases, where we think like someone who's 39 years old is a young person, and someone who's 40 is middle-aged and at risk for a heart attack, right? That's random, but it's also telling us something about how doctors think, how patients might think, anybody in the healthcare system thinks. So we look at a lot of the sort of human aspects of the healthcare system, and as sort of problematic and messy as it is, it's also, we talk a lot about how it's our humanity that what allows us to do our jobs. So it allows us to take care of any patient and understand their unique complexities. And so we really look at the data to say, all right, this is what it's telling us about the healthcare system. Here's some ways we can improve it, and here's some explanations as to why things might be in certain situations, why things are the way they are.
Hmm.
That's
Fascinating.
really
It really
interesting.
is.
Yeah.
That's Random Acts of Medicine, the hidden forces that sway doctors, impact patients, and shape our health. You can find that anywhere books are sold. You also have a Substack, right? I know you mentioned that, randomactsofmedicine.com.
Yep.
Awesome. I've got to check that. I want to read more about these rabbit holes you
We
guys
got to
go
come
down.
up with
Yeah.
the eye related idea. Anything.
Oh, you
Yeah,
I
we
just
don't
wanted to
have
say
should.
any
that.
I ones.
Come on.
Idea.
There's
Some
Did you get that?
Wait, say it again.
I said an idea.
Idea. Yeah.
she's the
I see
pun
that.
person of the
So here's an
of the
idea.
show.
Do you get a lot of like eye trauma from fireworks? Is that, am I,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a common one. Eyes and hands,
Yeah.
you know.
So I would imagine if you sort of plotted out eye trauma by day of the year, there'd be a little spike on January
Oh
1st
yeah,
and one on July 4th, maybe.
there
So
should be.
I'd be
Yeah.
curious, what you could do is you could look at, if a state sort of implemented a fireworks ban, right? That the year
Oh yeah.
before versus the year after. And you could sort of estimate exactly how many eye problems are being caused by those fireworks.
That's
Mm.
a
But
good one.
I bet if we
Yeah.
tried harder, we could come up with a better
I
one.
know. Let me ask you, I just had a random idea. Do you think Warby Parker has affected anything? Because the glasses are like really
Oh.
stylish. Do you think more people wear glasses now than would
I
have worn
think
them?
I think they yes. I do think that it's trendy to wear glasses now. I thought you were gonna say, does it hurt business like the because it's all online, right? For the
Oh,
most part,
yeah.
Warby
Mm.
Parker is like, does that hurt like a brick and mortar businesses? But that's actually I do think that's true. I think glasses, it for a long time it was kids didn't want to have glasses, right? It was they get made fun of. It would, for years and years it was kind of like, oh, it's nerdy to wear glasses. But now, really starting in when I was in residency is when I first started seeing it. You'd have like kids that would get disappointed when you tell them you don't need glasses. And so I do think it's you know uh, in fashion and vogue. I don't know what
Mhm.
the terminology is, but glasses are in now.
Right.
Does that
Trendy.
sound, did I sound
Well,
natural saying
Nope.
but
that?
does that
Nope.
Not at
does
all.
that also correlate with a reduction in contact lens related problems, for
Ooh, less
example?
Pseudomonas.
I mean, you would think so because, the more time you're wearing glasses, obviously, the less time you're wearing contacts.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would love to anything you can do to make people be more responsible with contact lens wear. I will give you cold hard
You should
cash.
look at well, I don't think you could probably have the data for this, but, like, I wonder whether the invention of electricity led to more eye problems.
What do you have
Mm.
in mind?
Oh, because because of screen time or
Nope. That's why I said electricity, not technology, like, not devices and stuff or the internet.
Electricity.
Yeah.
why?
I wanna see if they can think of
Okay,
anything.
so the innovation of electricity.
Yes.
So,
Would cause eye
like,
I mean,
problems?
I was thinking light, but I would
yeah.
have thought light would have made things
So, did
worse because you
did
would be or better rather, not worse, but it's not
did
it's
Right.
not it's not
original
light.
light bulbs not have ultraviolet protection or something? You could get
Oh, I
cataracts.
don't know.
I think you've
Uh,
stumped us.
Yeah.
give us like another hint.
Well, you can do a lot of different things with electricity than you can do without it, and so it will affect where you spend your time.
Oh, more time indoors, you're saying?
More
Yeah.
time indoors. So you think it makes your vision worse?
Yeah, because 'cause isn't there some
So
study from, like,
there's a
South Korea or
yeah,
something?
there's a lot of studies that have shown higher rates of myopia
Oh,
As with more time
with
indoors,
more
because 'cause you're not
time.
looking
Right.
far away
You're not
as much,
Interesting.
like, off
that's
into
an interesting
the
yeah.
idea.
distance.
Yeah, so there is a lot of the big studies actually on myopia come out of Asian countries that where their kids are spending a lot of time at a desk reading on a computer, just basically really using their near vision to an extreme degree and less time. In fact, I think they've had to, there's been efforts to change the laws and rules, like
Right, like, you have to go outside a certain amount
kids
of
to
time.
spend less time inside versus outside to be able to kind of relax their accommodation and
So
so
here's
Right.
what
Well,
yeah.
and didn't Benjamin Franklin invent the spectacles?
Bifocals.
Bifocals? Oh, okay. Well, I'm just
Bifocals.
wondering if I mean, that's a correlation, right? If
Yeah.
those came about the same time as
Well,
electricity,
I
so
just got a new alert on my phone that told me I was holding it too close to my face and to hold it farther away to reduce eye
I know,
strain.
Chris. You can't talk on the phone
It
like
does it
this.
doesn't work right here. No, but so it was more it wanted me to have like my elbow like outstretched to look at it. I wonder if,
Oh.
before they institute that alert versus after they institute that alert, if you
Yeah.
Yeah,
have, differences in eye strain problems.
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
you go.
Interesting.
Well, we
Um,
have probably lost all but the nerdiest of our
I know
listeners at this
exactly.
point.
I want to before we let you go, I just want to end with one more question for Chris.
Mm.
Please tell me about the time you forgot your pants
Oh
on the
god.
first day
Okay.
of your OBGYN rotation. First of all, where because we both did
Yeah.
that rotation, where were you?
So our medical school, Dartmouth Medical School, is not like we don't have a huge hospital. So a lot of
Right.
us would go do rotations elsewhere. I was at Hartford Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut, which is
Mm.
drivable from New Hampshire, but you would go for the week and then go home on the weekend. So you had to pack a week's worth of clothes. So I go down for my first day. I packed. They had us staying in like an old nurses' college that had been converted into call rooms, and I'm staying there with another med student. He's a neurosurgeon now, Sebastian Rubino. Sebastian, if you're hearing this, you're a good guy in this story. So we like just hang out in our jeans from the day before, go to bed, wake up, we're getting ready. On your first day of the rotation, you should look good. So I'm like
Right.
getting a tie on and all that, and I'm like, oh no. Like I had packed a shirt, I packed everything. I did not pack any pants. All I had were like the dirty jeans I was wearing from the day before.
Oh my
And
God.
Sebastian is like, do you want to borrow a pair of mine? Which was a really nice thought, except that like I'm significantly heavier than he was, and his pants didn't make it past my like calves. So that just wasn't an option. And so we start roaming the
Uh,
hallways, and there's like a clean-ish looking pair of scrubs in the corner of somewhere. that I'm like, well, it's either this or jeans, and I guess I'll go with the scrubs. So then we go in for our first day, and I'm there in scrubs, and he's there in a like nice tie and jacket. And the first thing they said, it's like, all right, you guys got to go to OR training. So Chris, you're all set, but Sebastian, you're going to have to go change.
Oh,
Um,
no.
I went and
worked
changed
out.
with him and got a fresh pair, but
Yeah.
little did any patient know later that day that I forgot my pants that morning.
Oh,
I
my
can
goodness.
feel the anxiety, like the terrible, that feeling that you get when you
Just,
realized you forgot your
oh
pants.
no,
Oh my
Yeah.
yeah.
God.
And then I
As
went
a
went on a shopping
first day of
spree
rotation.
at Marshall's that evening.
Yeah. I did a similar thing, if it makes you feel better. Not long ago, actually. I went on a trip for work,
Yeah.
maybe like a year or two ago. And when I was packing, I had little piles of things laid out. I forgot to grab my pants pile, and I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
discover that until I was already there. And
Mm.
so I had to have him overnight
Yep.
them
That's
to
exactly what
me so
happened.
that I
And I
had
got
pants to
home
wear.
and there was my pants pile right on the foot
Yep.
of my bed,
It's right there.
laughing at me.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Happens to the best of
Well,
us.
next time you guys have you on, we'll have Bapu tell us his story about losing his pants. I'm
Exactly,
sure
yeah.
he's got one at some point. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. This is really a lot of fun, and yeah, just fascinating stuff. Keep up the awesome work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So we'll be right back with some listener stories. Hey, Kristen.
Yeah.
Our anniversary's coming up.
Yes, that's right.
You know what I got you?
What?
A bouquet.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
They're Demodex mites.
That's why you
And
shouldn't
look
have.
how cute those faces are, and the little legs.
That
and
is kind of cute, I
you
have
know
to
what
admit.
these things do?
What?
They cause you to have like itchy, red, irritated eyelids.
That's not cute.
Well, it's a disease. It's actually a pretty common disease called Demodex Blepharitis.
How do you know if you have it? What does it look like?
Well, you end up with this crusty, flaky buildup on your eyelashes, and it's pretty easy to see if you just look at them
That's
under a microscope.
pretty gross, though.
Yeah. So, well, you don't get grossed out.
Okay.
You got to get checked out.
Okay, that's a fair
yeah.
point. Yeah.
You got to go in. You gotta,
Alright.
and we'll look at your eyelids. You just go to eyelidcheck.com to get more information. All right.
Okay.
That's EYELID check.com to get more information about Demodex Blepharitis. These cute little guys.
Yeah, it's the
There
most
you go.
romantic anniversary gift
That's-
you've ever given me.
You're welcome. All right, we have a fan story from Delia. Delia says, I was listening to your podcast with Dr. Soderdahl just now, and it reminded me of a funny urology story, in quotes, urology story
Uh-oh.
that happened in my work. I'm a Dutch veterinarian, and when this happened, I was on call for the weekend. On Saturday, someone called me that while they were walking their shepherd, the dog had an unfortunate accident, and instead of jumping over a fence, he landed on the fence with his lower abdomen.
Ow.
The dog seemed like he was in a little bit of pain, but overall wasn't in bad shape, except that he was peeing blood.
Ugh.
Not good. I had to come in and examine the dog, trying to assess the source of the bleed as well as the extent. He was a young, excitable dog, as shepherds tend to be, and while I was examining his penis, by manipulating the penis and pulling back the prepuce, he gave
That's
us
a
a little
horrible word.
he gave us a little surprise, and a little puddle of liquid landed on the exam table. No blood in the liquid, and the owner was relieved. That looks a lot better. I then had to tell him that's not urine.
Oh my goodness. Oh no.
So Delia gives us a little background. Apparently, male dogs can be quite easily aroused. And some dogs only need a little bit of pressure on the right spot to ejaculate. Did you know that?
I happily
We
did
have a
not
male dog.
know that. We do.
Yep. In the end, the dog was fine, and the owner went home relieved, albeit a little bit embarrassed. And I had yet another
Ah.
addition to my funny animal penis stories.
Oh my
Imagine having more than one of
goodness.
those.
Right?
Veterinarians must have a lot. Thank you, Delia. That was I'm so glad I didn't read that ahead of time, and I just read that live for the first time. That was great. Send us your stories, knockknockhi@human-content.com, and they can involve ejaculate. It's totally up to you, whatever you want. Well, what a fun conversation.
Yeah, that was fun.
Does that
Went
make you want
a
to do
lot
research?
of places. I've been there, done that. I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's like fun research, though.
Sure.
Maybe they just make it sound really
Yep,
fun.
that is what's
Is
happening.
that it? Is
Yes.
that it? They make it sound
That's
like really
the fun
exciting.
part of research is when you
The
get cool
conclusions.
findings,
Right.
But like
Okay.
everything that leads up to that, it just made my soul wither and die.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's why I don't do that anymore.
But I definitely want to check out their book though.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
Random
That sounds
Acts
really
of
interesting.
Medicine. That sounds awesome. And let us know what you guys think. And if you have any guest ideas or ideas for games, we ran out of time. We didn't do a game today, but
Yeah.
it's okay. We had a lot to talk about.
That's right.
You can email us, knockknockhi@human-content.com. Hang out with us on all our social media platforms. You can also, did Chris tell me I used to not be as funny as I am now?
He said you did a stand-up set that bombed, I think is what he said.
I think I heard that.
I think so.
I'll take it. I'll take it
I
on
mean,
the chin.
sure,
That's okay.
any comedian was going to
Absolutely.
improve over time.
I mean, I'm like, you get better.
Yeah.
You get better. Well, you can hang out with us in our Human Content Podcast family on Instagram and TikTok at Human Content Pods. Thanks to all the wonderful listeners leaving feedback and reviews. Not just any reviews. Awesome reviews. That's right. If you subscribe and comment on your favorite podcasting app or on YouTube, we can give you a shout out. Like Emilio G on Spotify said, listening to this from Mexico. I love your content and it makes med school more fun to be in. Oh, thank you, Emilio. That's very kind of you. Good luck to you on your future career as an ophthalmologist. And also, full video episodes of this podcast drop every week on YouTube at the Glaucomflecken. We also have a Patreon. Lots of cool perks, bonus episodes, where we react to medical shows and movies, hang out with other members of our Knock Knock Hi family. It's not a member community anymore. It's a family. We're a family.
That's a little red flag for me. It's like
What?
in the workplaces where they say they're a family, that's like code for we're dysfunctional.
It's like a cult.
Kind of.
We are
Yeah.
not a cult. We're a normal, functioning group of people. And we'd love to have you in our non-cult.
Jeez.
Knock Knock Hi.
Don't become
Join.
a salesperson. Don't quit your day job.
Early ad-free episode access, interactive Q&A live stream events, and much more. Patreon.com/Glaucomflecken or go to Glaucomflecken.com, not a cult. Speaking of Patreon community perks, new member shout-outs, Caitlin E., Peter S., Medical Meg. Ooh, we got a Medical
Oh,
Meg.
I like that name.
And Genevieve F. Welcome all. Thank you all for joining.
I love a good like alliteration.
That's
It's
right.
a double letter alliteration
That's good.
too.
Medical
it's a
Meg.
meh.
Medical Meg. Shout out to all the Jonathans. We have Patrick, Lucia C, Sharon S, Omar, Edward K, Stephen G, Jonathan F, Marion W, Mr. Grandetti, Caitlin C, Brianna L, Dr. J, Rossbox, Javer W, Leah D, K L, Rachel L, Ann P, Keith G, JJ H, Abby H, Derek N, Jonathan A, Mark, Mary H, Susanna F, Mohammed K, Aviga, Parker, Medical Meg, Bubbly Salt, and Pink Macho. A virtual head nod to you all. Patreon roulette random shout out to someone on the emergency medicine level of our non-cult. Shout out to Chris M for being a patron. And thank you all for listening. We're your hosts, Will and Kristen Flannery, also known as the Glaucomfleckens. Special thanks to our guest today, Dr. Chris Worsham. And
Dr. Who what now?
Dr. Chris Worsham. Worsham.
Chris Worsham?
Chris Worsham. Worsham. I said right there. The pronunciation's
Yes,
right there.
that's correct, but you said Krish.
Chris Worsham, and Dr. Anupam Jena. And I got that one right too. Our executive producers are Will Flannery, Kristen Flannery, Aaron Corney, Grob Roldman, and Shanti Brooke. Our editor and engineer, Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Binsby. To learn about our Knock Knock Hi's program disclaimer and ethics policy, submission verification, licensing terms, and HIPAA release terms, go to glaucomflecken.com or reach out to us, knockknockhi@human-content.com with any questions, concerns, or fun medical puns. Oh, wait, we can't finish because Shanti had a joke we have to tell.
Okay.
We're going to save it for the very last.
Do
Okay.
we have a medical pun?
This is a medical pun
Okay.
from Shanti. What part of the body dies last?
What?
The pupils. They dilate. Knock Knock Hi is a human content production.
Knock knock. Goodbye.
Hey, Kristen.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I come home from work and I just like feel really run down.
Yeah, because, despite popular opinion, you actually do see a fair number of patients every day.
I do. My clinics are pretty busy, but I'm not the only physician that feels that way.
Mhm.
So many people feel overwhelmed and burdened so much that work-life balance feels impossible.
Yeah, nobody gets into this job for the paperwork.
Most people, definitely not me.
Mm.
And but let me tell you about the Nuance Dragon Ambient Experience, or DAX for short.
Tell me.
This is AI-powered ambient technology. It sits there in the room with you. It's transforming healthcare with clinical documentation that writes itself.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
It's like having a Jonathan there.
Yeah,
It's fantastic.
perfect.
And I got some stats for you.
Ooh, I love stats.
You're going to love this. 7 minutes is saved per encounter by reducing clinical documentation time by 50%.
7 minutes. That's an entire surgery for you.
Yeah, that's what DAX can do for you. And across all specialties, 70% of physicians report a reduction in feelings of burnout and fatigue.
That's pretty incredible.
It really is cool technology. To learn more about the Nuance Dragon Ambient Experience, or DAX, visit nuance.com/discover DAX. That's nuance.com/discover DAX. Thanks for watching the episode. You can find more on that playlist over there. If you prefer to listen, or you just had your eyes dilated, you can binge full episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Or join the party over on Patreon, where you get early access episodes, hang out with us, get lots of exclusive bonus content. Hope you subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think.